simply vanished into thin air. Button text _ image. But without making much effort at all, the American government did quickly round up and arrest some 200 Israeli Mossad agents, many of whom had been based in exactly the same geographical locations as the purported 19 Arab hijackers. Furthermore, NYC police arrested some of these agents while they were publicly celebrating the 9/11 attacks, and others were caught driving vans in the New York area containing explosives or their residual traces. Most of these Mossad agents refused to answer any questions, and many of those who did failed polygraph tests, but under massive political pressure all were eventually released and deported back to Israel. A couple of years ago, much of this information was very effectively presented in a short video available on YouTube. Button text _ image. There is another fascinating tidbit that I have very rarely seen mentioned. Just a month after the 9/11 attacks, 2 Israelis were caught sneaking weapons and explosives into the Mexican Parliament building, a story that naturally produced several banner headlines in leading Mexican newspapers at the time but which was greeted by total silence in the American media. Eventually, under massive political pressure, all charges were dropped and the Israeli agents were deported back home. This remarkable incident was only reported on a small Hispanic activist website, and discussed in a few other places. Some years ago I easily found the scanned front pages of the Mexican newspapers reporting those dramatic events on the internet, but I can no longer easily locate them. The details are obviously somewhat fragmentary and possibly garbled, but certainly quite intriguing. One might speculate that if supposed Islamic terrorists had followed up their 9/11 attacks by attacking and destroying the Mexican Parliament building a month later, Latin American support for America's military invasions in the Middle East would have been greatly magnified. Furthermore, any scenes of such massive destruction in the Mexican capital by Arab terrorists would surely have been broadcast non-stop on Univision, America's dominant Spanish language network, fully solidifying Hispanic support for President Bush's military endeavors. Although my growing suspicions about the 9/11 attacks stretch back a decade or more, my serious investigation of the topic is quite recent, so I am certainly a newcomer to the field. But sometimes an outsider can notice things that may escape the attention of those who have spent so many years deeply immersed in a given topic. From my perspective, a huge fraction of the 9/11 truth community spends far too much of its time absorbed in the particular details of the attacks, debating the precise method by which the World Trade Center towers in New York were brought down or what actually struck the Pentagon. But these sorts of issues seem of little ultimate significance. I would argue that the only important aspect of such technical issues is whether the overall evidence is sufficiently strong to establish the falsehood of the official 9/11 narrative and also demonstrate that the attacks must have been the work of a highly sophisticated organization with access to advanced military technology rather than a rag-tag band of 19 Arabs armed with box cutters. Beyond that, none of those details matter. In that regard, I believe that the volume of factual material collected by determined researchers over the last 17 years has easily met that requirement, perhaps even 10 or 20 times over. For example, even agreeing upon a single particular item such as the clear presence of nano-thermite, a military-grade explosive compound, would immediately satisfy those two criteria. So I see little point in endless debates over whether nano-thermite was used, or nano-thermite plus something else, or just something else entirely. And such complex technical debates may serve to obscure the larger picture, while confusing and intimidating any casually interested onlookers, thereby being quite counter-productive to the overall goals of the 9/11 truth movement. Once we have concluded that the culprits were part of a highly sophisticated organization, we can then focus on the who and the why, which surely would be of greater importance than the particular details of the how. Yet currently all the endless debate over the how tends to crowd out the who and the why, and I wonder whether this unfortunate situation might even be intentional. Perhaps one reason is that once sincere 9/11 truthers do focus on those more important questions, the vast weight of the evidence